Right. So, should we begin, gentlemen?
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah.
You want to do introductions, or is that standard on this show? First time on it.
Well, I think we did an introduction with the first time I did it with Zoran. So, I guess it seems only fair to say hello, anyone watching. And this is obviously me, Jack. We have Zoran, the regular, and the new guest star that is Desert Storm. Hello, Desert.
Jack, Zorn, good to be here. Thanks for having me on your little Twitch show.
Well, thank you for making tier lists. You're the one who's always been behind these, to be fair, so good to be part of the process for once.
I'm excited to hear Zorn's take on a lot of the German tanks. I think that's going to be the real
So-
analysis here.
Mouse is Super Unicum, right?
The mouse. It's about endurance. It's about outlasting an enemy with its lower DPM.
We'll circle around at that one, probably around the D tier list, but we'll start at the top here as we go through and build a sort of a holistic tier list for all the tanks currently in World of Tanks console at tier 10. Besides Zardy, because those aren't really tanks, but I digress, and we'll continue.
Right. Well, someone feel free to choose a place to begin.
So, any compunction here to pick a tank first?
What's the top right one? Is that the TVP?
Yeah, they're very hard to tell what they are. But yeah, that I think that is the TVP.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that one. It's good tank. Sure, that's my opinion.
Or you'd
You
place
think
it in
that's
the
Super
good
Uni?
tank.
It's good tank.
Oh, okay.
That's-
Oh, I
so
thought
I
we were going
want
to
to-
work from the top down. I thought we were going to do
Yeah.
like the Super Uni tanks and then work our way down as opposed to
I just picked
hodgepodge.
I just picked a random tank.
So I'd say potentially, well, E4 has to be top.
Oh, no doubt there. That's a given. 850 alpha console meta, corridor meta. That's just, yeah, that's a given. There's no discussion there. It's been that way. It's the reason why it's abandoned. Basically, World of Tanks, it's regulated via like TD limits specifically because of that tank. So perfect. That's done.
Yeah, well, that's probably pretty easy. Now, slightly more questionable, would you put Grilla as top tier or second tier?
Repeat that.
Grilla. Would you put that top or second?
I would say it's a little bit below, just because some of the 850 alpha tanks are just so strong, and because this is a relative structure, right? We're balancing tanks versus each other, and because some tanks are so highly calibrated, like the E4, probably the 268 as well, because they still have their 850 alpha. I think it has to be lower, and that's not because it's not a good tank or it's not a super tank, but it's just some tanks are just so broken or have such high upside that just can't be balanced relative to each other, to one another.
So it's a low pin, then that annoys me.
I don't think that pen's really the problem. It's just 850 alpha, APCR. E4 can just do it all, and it's peer if it were to be in that category. So I don't think I would consider that to be like a top, the best TD, which is sort of what that category implies. Is that if you're part of that echelon, you're best, one of the best tanks in the game. Which I think it's close, but I don't think it's as good as the E4.
Yeah, so should it be Unicum or Great?
I think it's going to be right below the. It'll be probably in great. I feel like so. We can go and put that there.
How about
And-
Machine?
Machine is definitely going to be uni-tier. Although I say this with a caveat. It's a pub monster, right? That 72 kilometers per hour with a really good platform that can dominate. I will say in comp, I don't think it's as good in comp as people think it is. It's you can shoot it through a drive wheel frontally, ammo rack it, track it, and damage it all in one shot, which is pretty unique. Module wise, that's a unique module structure where you can track a tank, damage it, and mess it up that bad. And so I feel like against good players who know where to fire on that tank, it loses a lot of its lethality. But for pub matches, you have to put it in the the uni tier. Just the way the tank's built is just ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think all the people who just drive around and play too aggressively at least drags it down too much. If it had like 40mm side armor, you could definitely put it in Super Unicum. But this isn't enough side armor. Just makes it so at least bad people can't even drive around too recklessly.
Yeah, I think I still think it's uni. Again, it had in a comp environment a little bit different, but pubs, I definitely think it's a uni tank and probably one of the best heavies. Just being able to flex around the map and just do damage. It's just. And then the next one I would say is got to be Super Conk for uni tier. If you guys want to have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
And the Super Conk is
direct
just
middle.
God, really, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, high DPM, high gun
do whatever
handling,
you want.
good armor, high gun depression. Only thing bad about it is really its speed.
APCR is standard.
And especially because you can combine it again with Snakebite and vents and all that on console. It just sort of makes it even better than PC's version because PC doesn't have like a mini vert stabs like console has with the Snakebite skill. So with that in mind, being able to combine those two, its ceiling is just it's the ceiling of that tank is probably the highest out of any vehicle in the game, and the ability to just carry matches, especially if you're going with like a full max Snakebite crew with food, rammer, vert stabs, vents, and all of the gun perks. It's just a laser beam. It's like the ACR from Modern Warfare 2. The gun is just amazing.
And also
So
has
I think
hedge,
that's-
'cause why not?
So I think that's we're pretty firm there as well. Anyone want to propose another uni tank?
Got the
Panzerwagen.
5A.
Repeat that, Zorn?
I was gonna say 5A.
Yeah, I definitely think 5A is sort of the sort of flex contemporary of the Super Conk, where the Super Conk is able to just has the staying power. The under PC version of the 1Z in our meta, that tank being able to flex around, really good heat round, not too bad AP, 490 alpha with a good reload, able to get hull down. And we had a discussion before all this about the Cupolas and how it's so much harder to snipe Cupolas on World Tank's console because of a couple of things, those being input lag when your trigger, no server side reticle, and some other small things that just make sniping Cupolas harder. So the tanks that are balanced around sniping Cupolas, like the 1Z is, if it's hold down right, it magnifies that tank's power, and the fact that those aren't as big of weaknesses on console as they are on PC, where if you're hold down, you might get exposed on proc, for example, a little bit on PC. It doesn't happen as much on console. So I think was sort of the crux of our discussion there, and that's why the 1Z is sort of a uni tank. It's just one of the best combination of aggressiveness, defensive play, and the ability to have that 490 alpha gun makes that tank just probably one of the best of the mainline heavies.
Literally don't know which one it is.
I think it's the one next to the tank destroyer. I think it's the one next to TVP. I think that's the one. Top right.
Near the top right.
Yeah, top right near the TVP.
This.
Yeah,
There
I think. So yeah, that's a Super Unicum, right?
Was that Super Unicum or was that Unicum?
I thought we were
would
doing
say
super. I would say super.
Okay,
I
Super.
thought just about everything we've done here is super right now. Just besides the gorilla, obviously, I think everything we've discussed is super.
I thought you said the machine in Unicum.
Oh, sorry. I assumed I meant super uni. Sorry, I thought I was just shorthand. I assumed our discussion was we're gonna work one tier down. So when I said Unicum, I was referencing just assume that was the tier we're talking about right ahead.
Yeah.
Was working our way down from the top one.
So Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, is that Super Unicum?
No, because it's a light tank.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it's
Fair enough.
Unicum. I don't think it's super uni just by virtue of the class and how the class, even though our Panzerwagen is better than PC's Panzerwagen, it's still a light tank and it still has to play against things like chisels, machines, and trying to eke out those spots on maps where vision range, our view range mediums do jobs better, and because we have so few bushes,
Well, we also have silent
can't
driving.
really. Yeah, silent driving too. That's a good point. That's something I haven't thought about. Is silent driving, which is a unique console perk that allows you to have better camo on the move, which is a straight buff essentially to medium tanks because it has no effect on lights. It elevates the ability of medium tanks to do the light tank's job right naturally. So if you have the ability to run that perk, you're already, it's a straight nerf a little bit to the battlefield efficiency of light tanks in their role, right, of scouting and doing damage and flanking. So I agree. I think no light tank can be higher than Uni just by virtue of the class and the limitations that light tanks have within console meta.
What about... So the E100 is still very heavily used in comp and still regularly tears up pub games. Does it
not really.
qualify for
In
Super
comp?
Uni, though?
No, E100.
No.
Dude. The E100's not. E100's going to be like B at max. It's just not. It's not really used in. The only reason people use it in comp is for it to die or to shoot HE, and then even then, there's better alternatives now. People are using like VK72s, 60 TPs. Like, for example, some of the multi-base assault strats. Most people use 60 TPs if they really need something to just like sit hold down. Like Nightmare would use like a 60 TP on some certain corners. E100 just is not. It's not as good as it used to be. This isn't like 2015 comp. It's rarely ever used, if all.
I remember those days.
But yeah, so next tank, I think just run through. Give me because I can't see the stream in front of me. Give me just a brief rundown of what we have so far.
So E4, Super Conk, 5A, Machine.
Okay. In the Super Uni tier, I feel like another addition that's pretty reasonable is the M60 Patton. Just how good that tank is. It's reverse speed, 350 heat. The fact that the gun around the gun mantlet and a little bit of the turret cheek is a little bit better than PC's. I feel like that tank is again another tank that just excels on console meta with the 350 heat round being able to just penetrate and just absolutely rip apart players.
Yeah, the M60 is the one after E3.
I think so.
Yeah, it's got the different turret to the Patton. It's got that like spotlight thing on the top, which is what you can identify it from.
Yeah,
Hello,
sure.
the Supreme. Welcome. So, do you think that rounds up Super Unicum?
So far we have the
Which-
Machine, the 1Z, the E4, the Super Conk. Oh, the Valor. The Valor has to be there as well, which is a new tank that was just recently
yes.
added. You can touch on that.
Yeah, the Valor, which basically... Is it actually as good, if not better, than the Super... Well, not better, but is it as good as the Super Conk down?
It doesn't have the radio bar at the top, or like that little cupola. It has a
Yeah, that's why
smaller
I was
cupola.
thinking maybe even better, but I was going to say the difference would be that sort of equalizes it is the Super Conk side shields and side turret armor is still quite troll. The Valor side
Yeah.
turret seems quite pennable. So that's what I was going to say. Maybe even... I was at first going to say
So,
better because of the
what's
lack of, as you
interesting-
say, the bar.
What's interesting about the Valor is actually, if you look at the tank, and you have it in your garage, if you look at it, the left side of the tank has a really well-rounded side turret, but the right side, so where the machine gun ports are situated on the left side of the tank facing it, it's very bulbous and very rounded, so the side of that turret is actually somewhat bounceable. On the right side, there's an indentation where they have the smoke launchers, and it's near the eye, like the eye decal on the side of the tank. So from one side of the turret, it's very bouncy. From the other, there's this massive indentation, similar to the Kanzapans, the Tier 9 German medium, where that indentation acts as sort of a weak zone. So if you get it from one angle, one side it's really troll, from the other side it's not as much. So it actually depends on which side you're viewing the turret from at a 45-degree angle. So I would say a little bit weaker just because it has that one troll side, so you have to keep that in play. But otherwise, I think it's just as viable hold down. The only difference is that a Super Conqueror theoretically should be able to put out more damage because of the DPM if it's hold down. So I think overall the Valor is a little bit better than the Super Conk because of flexibility, but just on raw damage capability, the Super Conk is still supreme, I feel like.
Okay. I can't think of any others that really would challenge for Super Unicum, for the god
No,
tier.
I think that rounds out the god tier, and you obviously, if we're talking relativistically, you don't want too many tanks in god tier because
It
you
defeats
can't
the point
have
of it being god tier.
Could
exactly
we have-
exactly right.
debatably could we have put the chisel there pre-nerf?
The pre-nerf chisel, in my opinion, would have been one of the best tanks in the game just because of DPM. I still think it's a Unicum tank, and I think now the fact that you have to run coated optics because it goes from 400, it went from 420 meters or 410 meters to 400. You can't. You have
420.
yeah, since it lost V range, you can no longer as reliably just roll with vents and be fine. And the vents with that tank to make up for its gun handling, the same way that people typically run vents with STB1s and the Chinese 121 to mitigate the bad gun handling or bad-ish gun handling. Because of that, it lost a little bit of firepower, in my opinion. That might not be shared by others, but I feel like it's a Unicum tank at the very least. But it's a borderline super uni tank. But that's just my opinion on the matter.
Yeah, right now I would definitely say it's a uni. Before I would have said it was super uni.
Yeah, I think that's
The
fair.
question is, where the heck is it?
I would say uni. Yeah, I would say
it's
probably one of the
one.
best uni tanks.
Is it next to the Tusk below?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So let's shove that in at
this-
Unicum.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Right,
I think
if we
our super Unicum is pretty set right now.
Yeah, I can't. Those six seem. If you think of them in any form of role, you can't think of anything that does their role better.
Yeah, or at least that doesn't have the versatility that those tanks have. E4 being able to play like a pinch heavy, being able to play like a TD, and just all the roles that those tanks are able to fill. 100%, I agree, no doubt.
268 fall into Unicum.
268 is definitely a uni tank in my opinion. Again, 850 alpha. It
Insane
received
DPM.
a small nerf 2 years ago, reverse speed and a little bit of V range. But other than that, it's an 850 alpha tank on console, which is by
I
itself.
think we still have the
is-
exact same rate of fire as PC as well.
See,
I wouldn't be surprised.
16.5.
But yeah, that tank is definitely a uni
Yeah,
tank.
same.
And that's definitely one that's used in comp too.
Yeah,
is
there you
that-
go. Sorry, it's just confirmed. So we have the exact same rate of fire, except we have 100 more alpha.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
It's got pretty good accuracy as well. 0.33. I mean, the only thing bad about it is its V range and shell velocity. We never got the shell velocity buff from PC, which is good.
Yeah, that would have made it ridiculously overpowered.
Yeah, its V range is actually quite bad, 370. But it does have still good camo, so you can actually still kind of snipe with it still, if you want to.
Yeah, its sniping role is definitely where it's used a lot in comp. Is just you can just set that thing up somewhere, for example, cliff, and it can just pulverize cap or. And I feel like a lot of the proc and things like that, it can really hammer out a lot of damage sitting back and just sniping.
Yeah. To go back a bit to tanks that compete for its role. Well, personally, I prefer the 113. I don't think it beats the 5A, just because of 5A has more gun depression.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
the 113 is probably a uni tank, or maybe a great, but it's between there. It doesn't have its full complement of buffs that it has on PC, but it's still a pretty mean tank in my opinion.
So it's 113 going into Unicum, did you say? Or great?
I think that we can have that discussion now. I would put it in. Personally, I would say it's one of the tanks that's a borderline between the two. It just depends on the discussion that we're going to have here on where it eventually ends up.
I think I would lean more towards great than
Okay.
Unicum. I know its use in comp is purely for the troll of the upper plate. Like it's not taken because it's better than anything else. You take, if when asked, if we need someone to brawl, usually your choice is, do you want an IS-7 or a 5A? It's not ever 113. Sorry, whatever it is.
We use a lot of 113s for pushing. They're almost. It actually has almost surpassed the 1Z in use now, especially on proc and some of the maps where you push because the upper plate is just so good. So it's actually we almost use those more now than the 1Z. At least a lot of teams are. From what we're seeing.
Hmm.
So I would say that's the only caveat to that.
So would you put it under Unicum or Great then?
I'd say great, just because if it doesn't have its full complements, it doesn't have the full buffs that PC
Um,
has. So I'd probably
I just checked. Ours is pretty much the same. PC has
Rate
0.5
of fire,
better
right?
reload,
Yeah.
but we have slightly better aim time and accuracy.
then the current. Are you making sure you're checking? Is
Yep.
that from the app? Okay, so I guess Unicum then, if that's true. I didn't realize that we had better aim time. I always thought that our gun stats were the same bar rate of fire, which theirs has the complete buff to it on PC.
Oh, ironically, I was going to segue off the 130 and say if that goes in Great, does that mean the IS-7 goes in Unicum? But
I would
so
say
I think the IS-7 goes in
is
Great.
great. Yeah.
I want to slap that up there.
Fine.
Make sure
what
to
do you
use
think?
your Bogatir crew to balance out its APCR drop off.
Do you want to speak on that, Zorn? I'm not aware of what that how that impacts it.
I don't know.
Interesting point made there.
The Bogatir. I'm gonna take this point to rant. Bogatir crew is wasted on Russians because all the Russians spam heat, or they're so inaccurate. Why are you shooting outside 200 meters? Give me it to my Germans, darn it.
Is that the
I could
IS?
think like
Looks like the
maybe
IS.
Russian meat. Maybe I could think maybe with the standard pen drop off on some of the light tanks. Maybe that might help.
Yeah, you can put on the lights, but of course you're also like 0.46 accuracy, something like that.
I'm
But
assuming
anyway, we'll
this list
continue on.
doesn't actually have the 260 or the 279E.
It does. I
Might-
believe it does. Yeah. It has every tank at tier 10. I just went ahead and I grabbed every tank at tier 10 besides Artie.
Fair enough. Yeah. Oh, poor Artie. Said no one. Anyway,
Do you want to move us forward there, Jack? What tank you want to suggest for the uni tier, or make a suggestion there for that?
well, I was debating 4005, but I don't feel that hits uni. It might only hit
No.
Great.
No, that tank is not good anymore. With the nerf to it, not only its alpha but its penetration too. So it got a nerf worse than
Yeah, fair point.
PCs. It has almost no functional use. You'd rather just have an 850 alpha TD on console than anything like that. So I feel like the Death Star and the 4005 are probably going to be C tier. So we'll circle back to those after. But I don't think
Yeah.
those tanks. I would have put the 4005 with 275 Hesh and the old Alpha probably up in the top 1 or 2 tier lists, or like Unicum or Super Uni, just because of how powerful that round is, and that you're able to just one tap 2,000 damage done on one tank. And again, you can combine that with Snakebite, which console has. You could do some dirty stuff, but with the nerfs to it, it getting sort of double stuck there with the penetration and the alpha nerf that PC doesn't have. It's not very good, especially when you can compare it to things like E3s, E4s, and 268s.
Let's see. Object 279E.
Yeah, there it is.
Um,
I'm blind.
Bottom left.
I don't really like it that much. I think I don't like the modules, and I know it has really good armor, but I also don't like the DPM on the tank. But I would say maybe you guys can have input here, but I would say maybe Uni, maybe Great. I don't know. I don't think it's better than Great for me.
I would say it's at least great because its armor is just. You can do so much with its armor. It is such a huge bully.
The thing I would say
What
to
do you
that
think,
is, if in comp, no, because in comp they're going to be firing heat, and it doesn't do that well against heat. In pubs, sure, it stomps. I don't think it would do as well in comp. I would if we're going purely off ability in comp, I would almost go as low as good, not even great. The gun's not that
But
fantastic.
considering this is, I guess we're also taking into effect pub play. How would you rate it?
I think
considering that
if
point that
you
we're also.
kind of halving it, I guess great.
Okay.
I definitely wouldn't put it in Unicum. It stomps pubs really hard. It sucks for comp really bad. In my opinion, I've not done comp this year, to be fair. That's why one of the questions I was going to ask was, is things like the 140 still used?
No, 140 is almost never used.
Yeah, so
140 is just so much of this game is about gun depression and NATO 105 mediums, and there's so many good ones that why would you choose a 140? So that's the reality that we're at right now.
yeah.
Let's just put the 2.7 at great, and be thankful we have this version, not the PC version.
Yeah, gotta look. We're our own meta. I'm assuming things. So other light tanks. I don't think there's any other light tanks to hit Unicum.
No, Panzerwagon I feel like is pretty alone in its current form on console. I feel like we'll talk about the Sheridan and some of the other light tanks later, but for right now, I feel comfortable where we're at with the Panzerwagon being a lone Unicum tank for a light tank.
Speaking
Well,
of other light tanks, how about the Bat Chat?
No, just it's no way.
I've never been that much of a fan of the Batch yet. I think it's overrated. It has its worth, I guess, in comp, but it's not fantastic. What would you think about the 72? It's like you were saying, is now that's replaced the E100 if going to be used in comp.
No, it's used as a slug of hit points. So I don't think anything being used as a slug of hit points means it's a good tank. It just means it's got a lot of hit points, which I don't think that's the determiner of a good tank. So you're going to be a meat shield. You're a good meat shield, so therefore you're a good tank. I don't think that's how that.
Fair enough. What
I
about
don't think that's how that
IS7?
works.
I already went to the i7.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, we put it in great. Doi.
The only other tanks I could see off here is the 57 and E3.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the 57.
Yeah, I would say 57. 57
goes into Unicum?
Yeah.
Too strong.
Yeah. I would say Uni are great. I think so. If we're talking about its peers, you think about the 50B being nerfed, the Kranvagn not being as good. It's probably one of the best autoloaders. I would say
Probably go with far as say the best. I mean,
or for the heavy tanks at least, because everything but machine, machine's more of a medium.
But yeah,
I would say it's probably Unicum. I feel comfortable putting in there.
I'd say the T57. If you imagine like a real in-game situation, you start fully loaded, you're going to do just shy of 5,000. Oh, sorry. Yeah, just shy of like 5,000 potential damage in a minute.
Yeah.
So, 1,600, 22 seconds later, another 1,600, another 22 seconds later, another 1,600, which is just insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sort of ability to dump damage.
And the E3, I feel like, is a Unicum tank. It's 850 alpha. I'm trying to think. We have the 268 there. I'd put that at great. I think I think the E3 for me personally is more of a great tank. Its traverses were nerfed a little bit, which hurts a slight amount, but again, it's an 850 alpha tank, so it's sort of idiot proof. But I feel like our 268 and our E4 are just so much better. And that sort of E4 as a contemporary of that tank invalidates a lot of what that tank does.
The E3 and the 268 run into the same problem of once they're tracked and you've got no repair kit, you're screwed. The difference is the 268 is stealthier, has a better rate of fire, so it does everything the E3 would do in a normal situation in terms of as a TD better.
Yeah, so I'd feel probably great for the E3.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's done. Kranvagn doesn't really get any use. How's that people liking that Udes? I've not really played it much. I know it's quite liked on PC.
Skizfizz calls the meatball launcher because it's not very good, unfortunately. The Udes medium tank, it's just not very good. Our version is super wonky. because it
I
has
think-
the weird pneumatic suspension system on console is a little wonky, so
Yeah.
it's bouncy.
It's fair enough.
I'm at least playing with the 9. I'm not the fan of the gun handling. That was reduced a good amount during port, so I would.
Is the Stridsvagen still used for its meme DPM?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
But I
Could that go great?
No, at most, the STRV at most is great because it is too map dependent.
Yeah, that's a fair
Yeah.
point. I think it'll do well
I-
on Miravanka and Proc, but the second it gets like Himmelsdorf, unless you can take the top tower, you're screwed. Or like Ghost Town, you have to find niche positions. Or like
Yeah, I might. I might
Ensk,
put
you're
it.
gonna have problems.
I might put it as good because the maps are so punishing to it.
Well, it wasn't used as well in Cliff.
I mean, yeah. I think
It's using
that's-
cliff to counteract like certain climbs and stuff like that. But again, you're putting it all the way in the back, where in a pub match you're never going to be able to utilize that position really, because its job's to farm one position, right? Like it can't flex around the map, so it's relying on singular positions in a lot of maps. So that's where he's referencing the map dependence.
So good for that, not great.
Yeah, I say good.
I'm fine with that. Good works as well there.
Right, yeah. Right, well, is there any other candidates for Unicum then? I mean, I can't think of many, really. I mean, the
Oh,
only one I would've-
FE4202. FE4202 is a Unicum tank, I feel like.
Oh, okay.
The fact that
Or
it can
Chief,
have
what
snake
about
bite.
Chieftain?
Chieftain's so you have the Super Conk and the Valor at Super Uni. At Unicum, I feel like an argument
the
could be made for the Chieftain, but
I said last time I played comp, it was still used. Not a lot.
it's still used. It's still
certain
used,
maps.
but now you'd rather have a Valor or Super Conk in it. Like you
Yeah.
much rather would. And again, this list shouldn't be just comp. It should be pub match too.
When
And again,
pubs,
in a
I
lot
say
of-
it stomps. It stomps pretty hard in
Well,
pubs.
a lot of tanks do, but I feel like if you have to take it, for example, on like Ensk, if you have to take a flat map, right, you don't have natural hill-down positions. You have to think about this tank in all settings, not just just ideal settings. How can this tank flex around the map?
I would think.
Yeah.
I would actually say even on something like Ensk, there are enough. Its ability to go hull down almost anywhere because of it being quite low down, and then the gun depression means all you need to make a great hull down spot on Ensk is the right pile of rubble.
No, with a cupola, and then again, you have good DPM. I'm using that as an example I'm using that map as an example, and that maps that don't
but I'm
have
saying is in-
defilades or don't have you're sort of screwed there. So I would say probably it could be Unicum tank just because of its DPM, but the Valor, if again the purpose of this whole list is to talk about things relative to one another, and that's why you're looking at comparative advantages of tanks over another, and that's how you generate your tier list. The Valor
Yeah,
and the
but-
Super Conk are definitely superior to this tank. I would
Yes,
s-
but
I would
they're in
say
Super
it's
Unicum,
a mix.
so-
No, and that's why I'm getting to this point in the discussion. I think it's a toss up between uni or great.
I'm more inclined for great, just out of the bias of overmatchable side armor.
And that's a fair point. But to think about it,
I'm
I
okay
think
with putting it
because
in
of
great.
Snakebite Jack, you could put it in uni. If we're talking
Okay.
about, because in previously we've talked about the Snakebite skill, and the Chieftain with the Snakebite skill and vents and all that is pretty mean. And so I would say personally, I think you can put it there, and then and with that place there, I think you have to go as well Patton probably if we're talking about just really well-rounded tanks. Which I sort of feel about the Chieftain, the Patton, and the 4202 because all of those are sort of those DPM tanks. So And yeah,
Patton is a very easy tank to play.
yeah. So I feel like the Chieftain, because I'm trying to mentally group these tanks, right? And I'm thinking if I place this one tank here, don't I have to place its, other tanks around it in the same place? So I would feel comfortable because I consider thinking about the 4202 and the Chieftain both being in uni. Then I think you're right, Jack, that you have to put the Chieftain therefore in a uni too. If I'm going to put things like the 4202 and the Patton in uni, so I understand that perspective at least.
So I think, sorry, that gives us Raltar Panzerwagen, Chisel 268, 113, 57 Heavy, Chieftain, Baton, and 4202 in Unicum.
Yeah. And anything else that you guys are looking at as if you're rolling through your garage or looking at tanks, is there any other vehicle that's striking to you that needs to be placed somewhere?
I was going to sarcastically say K91.
Nah, man, if you want to be
No.
sarcastic, you have to put Manicore. That's the worst now.
True.
Piece of garbage.
Yeah, I mean, that thing's good for spotting, just not for, actually doing damage.
Good for spotting, bad at anything else.
But where did Turkey rate the Manticore? Because
Um,
he seems
He-
really conflicted on that when he plays it.
Yeah, he never in the light tank infographic he never gave me a hard answer, or he never suggested where that thing would go. So I would probably say, just from small vignettes into his stream, he'd probably put it maybe a little bit under the Sheridan, in between like the lower end light tanks, in between like the 1Z, Tusk, and those kind of tanks, just because of the ammo and the DPM, and then the
I say
nerf
below
to its
average.
engine.
So yeah, I don't know if you've seen one of his recent videos. Actually, was his clutch game. It was like 1v4 or something with one, and like literally halfway through the game, he's going, "This thing's gone. It's absolutely awful." But there he's sat there literally sniping people, and then suddenly goes, "Well, at least its camo's god tier."
Yeah.
And that's the thing with that
Yeah.
tank, is it does seem to have an absolutely awful gun, but it is such a stealthy little bastard.
Yeah, and the fact that you can get snakebite again on that tank, I think
Yeah.
it's better than the 1Z and the Tusk, but it's still not as good as the Sheridan, the T100, and then the Panzerwagen, obviously.
Hang on, what tank you did mention? 60 TP.
C tier. I mean, it's going to be like that's going to be like an okay tank. Just because it fulfills one role again doesn't make it a
So
monstrous
great
tank.
for
It's
that
just
sort of area. So yeah, we'll get
a
onto
little bit
that
under
gap.
great. It's
Yeah.
under great. I'd say it's under great.
It may Desert, maybe
It's
helpful
just
if you actually
okay.
watch the stream.
Sorry, I'm trying to grind out my ×5s that I'm playing, and I'm also looking through my garage and looking at stats and stuff like that too. So that's
Fair
why
enough.
I'm looking through all my garage, because I have most of these tanks. So I'm looking at like some of my stats in them, and then just looking at like how do I have it set up, and my perks and stuff like that. So that's sort of generating a lot of how I'm going through this list.
I do wonder what would happen if we get stuff like the T22 medium.
Ooh, but that is a gimmick tank. It has pretty bad gun handling DPM. It's sort of like it would be
Once it got
similarly
nerfed.
handled to our. It was nerfed
remember-
similarly to our 907.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If you remember how it first came, it was really, really good. Like, I used to watch the esports, and that was became the go-to Russian medium. But then, as you say, they nerfed the crap out of it, and no one played it.
Yeah, I
So-
don't know enough about the tank to comment on it, to be honest. I don't...
Do you know how the 257 has that
257.
has the V-shaped hull?
Yeah.
This was a medium with that, so it side scraped like a god, and also bounced random shots from the side.
Gotcha. Okay.
Except it also, at the time of release, had DPM like a fucking 140.
Sounds pretty mean.
Yes, exactly. So that's why it went straight into the esports teams, and then they nerfed it, and it became more like how our 907 was just before it got buffed. And so, again, no one played it.
Gotcha. Understood.
Right. So, if we start looking at break/good, I guess
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else that can go into Unicum class.
I think as we move, just for future, as we move farther and farther down to this list, you're going to have tanks that are more apt for discussion as to where they're going to be, right? Because you're getting the smaller margins. So if you want to, since we've done the uni and the super uni, if you want to shift downward and start looking at the absolute terrible tanks, we can sort of work our outliers in, right? So if you want to do that, that might be helpful, just to
Yeah.
situate ourselves for the future.
Okay. Bad
Progetto.
tanks.
I'd see.
but-
I can't say that's one of the worst, because players like Skizfist are able to manage crazy damage in it. And again, he hates it, but he says, like, again, it's It's pretty terrible on console, but I don't think it's as bad as the K91, for example. I don't think it can ever be as bad as the K91. It's bad,
No.
but it's not that bad.
So should we put
Put
K91
it-
at the very, very bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, K91 definitely. It's got
Uh, K91 and then Type 5.
Ooh, didn't think I'd hear you say that.
The Type. The Type 5 it's really gimmicky. Both its guns are quite poor, but they do so much damage.
no Type 5
But-
is pretty bad, man.
Yeah. Just that if they
That's-
don't
that's a-
shoot heat, it can hold so well. But yeah, it is pretty bad.
I would take almost every tank over that.
I'm almost hating myself because I quite like the tank, but is Jaegeru down there?
No. So here's sort of the interesting thing, since this is like we've had a discussion on what this thing is, because the 4005 of the Death Star got nerfed. That tank, I would say, is slightly gains from that because it's
Yeah,
like
the thing is, I
Alpha
would still
King.
say I would take one of those two over the Jaegeru now.
Jaeger,
Because
I
now
personally
would.
they still have better AP.
Jaeger is so darn freaking. It is a gimmick take in which, unless you're in a platoon, you have to trade or let the enemy come in front of your gun, because it is quite hard.
It's
to
bad, but I don't
push
know
with
if
that
it's
thing.
like I think the
The
Chinese,
armor doesn't
the
bounce
Chinese,
if anyone
the-
fires.
It's
Oh yeah,
not as bad
Chinese.
as like the Chinese tank. The Chinese TD is just absolutely terrible, right? So like
Yeah,
I'm comparing
I
the
forgot about
Jaeger.
that
Like
thing.
if I'm thinking like the worst, I would pick that over something like a Chinese TD any day of the week.
Yeah, Chinese TD definitely bottom. That has to be
Yeah,
bottom.
Chinese
Uh,
TD K91. I think those are in Type 5. I think those are
Yeah.
like our we've already established our upper boundary. Our lower boundary is sort of there.
I still think Tusk is a bizarre one because if you're being honest,
Super Unicum.
yeah.
No,
So the Tusk is
so
fun.
Continue.
I'll say the Tusk is fun, and don't get me wrong. But if you actually, I bet if you got on the stats and you took out the people who are 55% and above, the stats of that tank would drop drastically on the overalls. Because realistically,
doubt.
there's a reason why if you see a derp Sheridan, you don't think that guy's a threat. He's going to occasionally
No,
come
you're-
up and derp someone randomly, but other than that, they're essentially redundant to the team. The Tusk as well
No,
is
that's-
not
that's pretty
stealthy, because considering it's got the 13105 hull and the 13105 is quite stealthy, the Tusk is not stealthy. I don't think its view... Is it got as good view range as the Sheridan? I thought...
It's got 420.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
so
got-
it's at least
it's
got a good view range.
It's pretty damn good, and it can scout if you coded optics and just run it like a derp tank when people get close, and then just scout otherwise at arm's reach.
But yeah, as much as like both people like me, Turkey, and others, Skiz, I'm sure has something similar, will have these bizarre like 5,000, 6,000 damage games on Ensk. Realistically, you get Ensk or Himmelsdorf or something like you're redundant. You're extra redundant, like even more than
Yeah,
a
the
normal
only-
light tank.
The only thing I can say to think that sort of runs counter to that is it excels as a light tank killer. The one job with the Tusk is to kill the enemy's light tank. Like you just roll up and derp it, right? You find it through your V range because you can out V range a lot of enemy lights, and then you just roll up and derp it and run away. I feel like in that regard, it's not as bad as other tanks because it can just roll. It can do that, and its gun is buffed relative to the derp Sheridan. It's a better derp Sheridan. If you're running the derp Sheridan, it's better than that.
Yeah, it's better than
right?
the Derp Sheridan.
Yeah.
It's
So
better
I
gun
feel
handling,
like
better
because of
DPM.
that, I feel like with the buff to the 1Z Chinese light, I would have previously said the Chinese light is worse. But now that it's been buffed back to its sort of former glory, and I use that term loosely, glory, because it's still pretty bad. I would say that's fair to put the Tusk as a below. But I will say that I think as a light tank killer, if your job in a pub match is just go screw up the enemy light tank, derp him and kill his modules, it's pretty good at that. It's not it can do that.
Only if it's mostly against the lower tier, though. Because I was thinking about it as you said that, and I was thinking mostly. But the Sheridan has the spaced armor. So it's basic. It's very, very hard to get a reliable pen with a derp gun on a Sheridan. So not really going to get those pens against the Sheridan. So a Sheridan's just going to eat you alive. Then you can't pen the T100. Like, pretty much anywhere. I think you can obviously pen its arse, but the T100 is not going to reliably give you its arse.
Yeah, no.
The
agreed there.
WZ,
So you're
again,
only-
same thing. You're only going to pen its arse. You're not going to pen its turret. You're not going to pen its front. And if you hit its side, you're unlikely to pen unless you get through the track. It's just very unlikely. So the only one you're going to
No,
reliably
agreed.
pen is the 13105 or a tier 9.
Panzerwagon as well.
Oh yeah, sorry, and the Panzerwagen. Yeah,
And the Manticore, you knock out his crew in one shot.
yeah. But yeah,
But no,
just
you're
say
100%
it-
right.
yeah,
Good
it
points.
just it has counters to its, like, you know. Also, the fact that all in all, it is a derp gun. So, how many times have you seen Turkey who can lead a shot like no one else while playing a light tank, perfectly line up, perfectly aim, and then it just misses anyway because it's a derp gun.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good
I
point.
love
Yeah,
the
so-
I love the Tusk, but I have to admit, if you're not having fun in it, it's really silly choice.
No, and I think those are all fair points.
So since we already talked about the Manticore, let's try to put the Tusk and the Manticore at below average.
I would say Tusk is probably bottom tier, right? That's the point of our discussion we just
That's
had.
what
and
I was thinking. Yeah, that it goes all the way to
yeah,
tomato.
and then we can put, I think, the Manticore's, one tier above. I feel like is a fair comparison there. One tier above that bottom tier.
Yeah.
Um,
Should we'll try and round out the lights, seeing as we're on the lights right now.
yeah.
So, as this first on the list, Sheridan. Where do you think we're putting that?
Great or
Above
good.
Manticore, below Panzerwagen. So that leaves,
I think
average
that
or
and the
good.
200 are gonna. Yeah, I think they're gonna be.
Great.
Yeah, I think great. That and the T100, I think, like, they have a role. They have good guns. Those are the better of the light tanks.
Yeah.
It's the WZ.
So I think great or good.
So if we go, would you put, say, 100 LT in great, Sheridan in good?
That seems reasonable. Just because I think that seems pretty reasonable, considering that the T100 is just the best all-around scout, right? If its job is to find the enemy and survive as a light tank, it does that super well. Whereas the Sheridan,
It's
more
a
the
combat
all-rounder.
support.
13105. Either would you say that goes in good or average?
oh,
I-
that's average or below, just because of the nerf to it.
Yeah, let's do average.
And then if I can ever
It's
find
certainly
it,
not
there's
the
also
same
then the
class as
WZ.
Manticore.
Where the heck is WZ? WZ is number 4.
Yeah. So the question is, do we put that as average at the same level as the 13105, which I
Yes.
don't think is really. I would put it at the same level as the Manticore. Not that I still think it's better than the Manticore, but I think the 13105 is better. That clip, like, realistically, it's very, very hard to kill a 13105 with another light tank. If the 13105 is even remotely competent.
I feel like I'd rather have the camo value of the Manticore, though, in those scenarios. The camo is what keeps that tank alive as opposed to its gun.
Yeah, but where do we put the WZ though?
Average.
No, I would say I would say the WZ is just one above the Tusk.
Below average. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Uh,
You're outvoted here, sorry.
yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to gauge it in terms
but
of.
feel free to
it's
justify,
a light
like-
tank. I'm trying to gauge it because it's a light tank, and light tanks tend to have high skill caps. It's a light tank. Light tanks are kind of meh.
In a lot of those scenarios, I'd just rather be playing Leopard 1, and I'm thinking about, like, a Leopard 1
Yeah.
relative to its skill. Like, a Leopard 1 is not as good, but I'd still rather play it.
I think what I'm trying to do is I'm thinking if we're comparing it, so if you go Sheridan versus 13105, the 13105 will probably actually struggle to kill the Sheridan in just a straight out fight. Because yes, it has the
I think a
clip,
Sheridan's
but it
better.
will bounce randomly off the Sheridan because of its troll armor. On the other hand, the WZ versus the 13105, that 105 should win. And that's why I was
For me,
saying below average, is because it's better than the Tusk. It's worse than the 13105. That puts it at below average.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a fair assessment there. That makes sense to me.
Right, well, that sorts out the light tanks. Well, it's so as it was mentioned a minute ago. Where would you put the Jaegeru, the Death Star, and the 405?
Ooh.
Let's go for the high alpha TDs.
Yagru, I'm planting a flag in average.
Yeah, I think those are all average now. Oh, I would say the 4005 is a little bit above the Death Star just because of flexibility, but I think those are all pretty average tanks now, right? Like the people who people who RBRT Hesh still are going to find some utility in them, and that provides that level of gameplay. But the ceiling on the ceiling on the 4005 has been smashed downward because it just doesn't have that alpha and or penetration, and it's already an RNG-ish gun because of the characteristics, and it's even more of a slot machine with lower payout now. So I feel like the element of that a good player could take that and just get into a really good position and pre-aim. It eliminates a lot of the value you got from being able to pre-aim positions and one-tap dudes, right? Like that was the ability of that tank. Is if you were a good player, you could know where enemies were going to position themselves and like impact those logistical lines by just derping dudes for all their health. And so I feel like those tanks have had their ceilings diminished. The 4005 more so because it had a higher ceiling, and the Death Star obviously is as sort of being a slower tank. That was less the case, but even so, the tanks are just not as good.
Comical timing is we're probably this week coming due the article that says whether or not they're going to keep the changes on the 4005 Death Star.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they say.
So yeah.
Let's finish up. Let's finish last with the British TDs. Badger.
I feel good.
Good or average?
I feel it's got to go good.
It will feel good just by how bad the tortoise is.
The armor genuinely is quite troll.
Continue. I think it's better than the Death Star now, definitely. Wherever the Death Star is, I think it's a little bit better than that.
So the Death Star's average, so it would go good for the Badger.
Yeah, I feel like good's not too bad. I mean, I wouldn't pick it, but of the non 850 alpha or like the non like hyper TDs that are obviously standouts, it does its job. It's not too bad. It's underplayed. A lot of people don't play it, but I feel like it can do a lot.
As they link quite well. 263.
Ooh, 263.
Because I'm linking that off the Badger because they're very similar concept. It's high DPM, good armor, but then the 263 has it beat hands down in mobility.
Yeah. You can't run vents with a 263, and then
No.
So I'd say probably around the Badger. I think that's a fair signpost to place it near.
So about the same as the Badger.
Yeah, I'm not really feeling one way or another on that tank. I think that's a fine position.
I think that's fair.
Let's do the other Russian V4.
And at the end, we can always at the end here we can do a summary and remanage some of the tanks depending on just further analysis and where we're seeing everything sort of placed. So one tank I did want to talk about was the 50B. The 50B is one tank we haven't talked about.
The new medium.
The new medium. Yeah, exactly. I like it.
Yeah. So we'll do the Zoran wanted to do the version 4, 268 version 4, and then we'll do the 50B.
Let's just finish all the. I was going to say let's just finish all the TDs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's that as well. Oh, yeah. Okay. Finish the TDs and then straight onto the 50B.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So I haven't noticed much better about the 264. I still would put it probably. I was going to say below average, but I think it might actually have to be average. No, actually, below average. Has to be below average.
Yeah, I think it's still below average. I don't think the tank is.
I was actually going to say average, and then I thought, well, we've got the Jaegeru and the Death Star there, and they still shit on it. I still think they're better than the 264. Sorry, 268 version 4.
I'm still worried about its armor. I haven't seen enough to actually fight.
Well, this is the thing. That was why I was momentarily going to go for average. And it has still got very good armor against most people. But, one, you can still flank it relatively easily. or track it. And 2, it does still have very, very, very pennable like roof hatches. Well, not very, very,
Yeah.
but reliably pennable. So there's
No,
no
fair
real
points all around
situation where its armor is perfect. At least you can do the troll thing with the Jaegeru. You know, if you're got the gun depression, you can use like a lip to angle your armor even further. At which point you basically become unpennable. It also hides your rear hatch, which you can't shoot back. But it's a good tactic. You know, I've used in the Jaegeru. You get yourself in an angle so no one can shoot you. Wait for a few people to bounce off you, pull back, aim your shot, fire, go back into it.
No, yeah, no, I agree.
264 just can't. Sorry, 268 version 4 can't do that.
Yeah, it still has also pretty low DPM.
Yeah. So the last one, Foch.
Foch, I think
Oh.
is I think it's actually not as bad. I think that's one that's actually somewhat benefited from its transition to or its buffs.
One of
I
the
would agree.
things I found interesting from all those forum posts was as they were calling it, Package B or whatever, does a lot better than Package A, which means players using the 125 clip do significantly higher average than the bigger derp gun. And I don't know how
Probably
that
spammy.
affects our thing. But when I say a big difference, I mean 3% average win rate over the tank different. Like, that's huge. Like, that's
Yeah,
a
it is.
huge difference.
Yeah.
I think they're saying it's
When
like
look at the
50.4 or something with the 770 alpha, and then like 53.2 with the 120.
Yeah,
Like-
they did buff the 155's gun arc, so that would help a lot because it does have pretty poor aim time, so that might help a lot readjusting. Those guns are such a dramatic difference in playstyle.
I think that's the thing.
I would say it's either average or good. I think that's where I'd put it. I'm assuming people are using the B package, right? I think the B package with full AP, a lot of APCR to make up for the low pen is what I'm assuming people are playing with, right? Because we're not just like we're assuming most people are playing the Sheridan with the Top Gun, or we're going to be assuming people are using the IS-4 with the Top Gun, the better gun.
I think this is the thing that why I think I guess it would almost be good to have the tank twice, because I actually, from the stats, I think most people play it with a 770, but they do worse by 3% than the people who play it
Yeah,
with the
I
120.
think if you're going to be playing that with a 770 gun, though, you might as well be playing like an E4, E3, or something
Yes.
else. Like if you're, so
Yeah.
the value to me is the ability to perma-track guys, which not many other TDs have. The ability to fire and then track a guy for 2,000 is the uniqueness of that tank that maybe the Waffle had, but now no longer has because most people are running that with a 750 Alpha gun, right? So I feel like the value for that tank and the uniqueness, it's fair to assume most players are going to be using the B gun because that's where it gets some, sizable advantage, not only in terms of its firepower and ability, but also the uniqueness of the tank.
Yeah, I would put it like good. I'm probably with the Waffle as well.
See, this thing I was going to say 770 average, 120 good. And if we're going to assume most people should use the 120, good.
Yeah, I think good's fine with the Foch. I think the side armor helps a lot when you're engaging mediums, and you can do a little bit of more wiggling, which helps the angling on your radio bar and some of that, and trying to get bounces because you're not going to be just straight penned every time because you have such poor side armor. So I agree with that.
And then the last one is Waffle. I think that's the last TD.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wait,
I think
did we place
good.
the Strixvogen? Yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
we
Yeah, we
placed
did.
the
No.
Strixvogen.
We
Yeah, we
Yeah, we did. It's the first one in good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think good with the 750 out. So I think it got better for good players and worse for worse players, right? Because you can't full clip one tank, but you have a 2-second window that you can now peak with 750 alpha or 750 alpha heat rounds, right? The big gun got better, and it makes maybe at like range trying to loop those heat rounds into targets is a little bit it's a higher a higher ask than the APCR laser that you had previously, but that tank, just the window and peak time now is pretty damn good, and I feel like good is where it should be. And if I'm assuming people are using the 750 Alpha gun with heat, I think that's a fair assumption though. But I know a lot of players are still trying to use the small gun, but that's just not the way to go about that tank anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's 4 seconds for 2,250 alpha now, which is insane. That's with
Yeah.
the 150. Because obviously they dropped it to, was it 2 second into clip rather than 3. So it's just,
Yeah.
that's so mad. Yeah, I've switched over. I'm someone always, whenever I played the Waffle, had to be the 128. Now it has to be the 150.
I
Yeah,
switched
exactly.
because I'm a darn hipster.
Of course you are. You probably should want the gun off your mouse. It feels more familiar.
Mhm.
So should we put in that with, what was that, good or average?
I
Good.
think good.
Question, where would you put it before? Just for like an
Before the nerf,
intrigue
I
one.
would have probably one tier up. But again, that's only assuming like a good player's playing it. Like players that just
See-
RBRT clip and die, I feel like they got nerfed, but good players got a buff, sort of buff from it. So it just depends.
Like this is for exactly the reason you said. I actually probably would have put it in average, because that's all people do is they do go drop one clip and die. And let's be honest, 70% of the people playing it probably aren't going to full pen every shot.
Yeah.
In fact, I would go as high as maybe 90% of people playing it weren't going to full pen every shot just because of RNG. Doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world, RNG might still say screw you. So you go in, take your 2,000 health, do approximately 2,000 damage, and die.
Yeah.
That's
Hey,
pretty
That's a fair point.
useless.
Hey,
So I actually
doing
would have.
2,000
I say it's almost
damage-
got better.
Doing 2,000 damage is pretty good for those average people.
Yeah, but I just mean if you compare it to something like even the Death Star with the now nerfed Hesh, will still do more than that pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's my point. Is if we were considering where we're putting the Death Star, I think previously the Death Star would have been in good, and that can basically do what a Waffle will do in one shot. And you're on, and the average like 2.8 shots or something. I think when they released the forum charts, so the Death Star was averaging just under 3 shots a game, or something daft like that. So
No,
you're
that's
much more
fair.
likely to do. So yeah, I think the Waffle has overall been buffed by this change anyway. So that's my point.
Was also
That's
buffed
fair.
because Hesh was nerfed, so it won't get one shot as often.
Yeah. So well, that's TD's done. 50B.
When
So Des, what are your
So
thoughts
Good
on
or
that?
great? It's good. I think it's gonna be good or great. 50B
Great.
has to be good or great. Great.
it's an
Okay.
autoloader.
I was. I have to say it's good or great. I'm slightly leaning more towards good though. I think thanks to the introduction of the machine, it really isn't. It's really not as strong, but I'm aware the machine is all the way up super, so maybe great is actually fair. Yeah, I think great's fair.
Bat chat at great. Because
I would say one thing that's really unique about the change too is that now in that tank, especially when you're playing ranked, you are going to be matched up against other medium tanks, and that puts you at a really, really good advantage, like health, and also in terms of ramming and just. That's one thing is that the matchmaker, because we're talking about pubs and
We're all
comp.
modes.
One of the things is in pubs, if you are now you have the weight of a medium tank, which is sort of a not. It's sort of an under discussed benefit of the tank when matchmaker is able to put influence in put more weights into the game as opposed to finding a quick match, right? Like a lot of time weights go out of the window when it needs to find a quick game, but when it's able to finely tune those matches where everything teams are aligned or there's some equilibrium there, it's going to be matched up against things like bat chats or chisels, or and I think it can hold its own even against some of the more meta mediums because of its sort of ability. So that's one thing that's not really talked about. It's not really a buff to the tank or a change to the tank. It's changed and what that tank is most likely going to engage against, which is sort of a buff relativistically to that tank. But again, I don't think it should have been changed to a medium. But that change does affect what's more likely to be seen on the enemy team in a counter slot to yourself. So that's one thing that I think was a slight benefit to that tank.
Okay, that seems fair. Similar nation,
Bat
and we
chat?
discussed. Well, yeah. Let's do the 3 French mediums then.
Okay.
So yeah, Batchat.
It's like average.
I've always had a
Compromise on
good
good.
opinion of the Bat Chat.
Good works for me. I don't think it's great.
I don't
or
like the
uni or
Batchat.
Super uni.
I really don't like the Batchat, I have to say. Like I ground it out for comp, got it, expect it. You hear good things, you see those games of people having amazing games, and then you play it and you realize, oh yeah, the gun handling's trash.
Yeah.
Realistically, everything, its camo isn't as valuable as it should be. We're not PC. We don't have the bushes that they have. We don't have. We have the silent running, which means half the mediums in the game can accidentally spot you by getting a bit too close. No, I think it's lost a lot of what it could be.
And the HD model doesn't help it either. It made it slightly bit more bulky and it made the tank just feel worse. The HD model update that PC's had for a while.
Yeah. So
Okay, I consider it good.
yeah, good seems a relative compromise on that.
And what was the last medium tank?
30B. Yeah.
I would say it's probably in like the bottom third. It's got to be
Below average.
below average. It's not. I would rather play a Leopard. I'd rather play a Cax. I'd rather play almost any of the other 105 mediums. It's probably the least, like the bottom. That's for me. If I have to play a medium tank with a 105, that's the last one I'm going to pick. And that's just to me that what that statement
Having
tells me.
recently played both the CAX and the 30B, I would say map dependent between choosing between them.
No, Cax was snakebite all day long. The fact that the Cax can get snakebite on console allows that tank to just be
I
ridiculous.
still think the 30B is a better sniper. Like the gun
no.
handling on the 30B is really nice now.
If you're picking sniper, then you have to factor in that if you're firing at long ranges, your APCR is not going to be as good, and you're going to be more reliant on your heat rounds, which the Cax also has that beat. It's got a better heat round. So in the sniper role, you're shooting at like Type 5s, even 100s, super conks. Yeah, you have the crappy version of Hesh, which is still better than most tanks HE, and you also have a better heat round. And if you throw in snakebite, like you can snapshot at long range, so it basically turns that tank into a really good sniping platform if you need to snipe in that tank.
Yeah, I have my snakebite's on my 4202, but
I've got 3 of them, but they're all in my 2 and 5B chieftain in the super conco. So
I don't have one, sadly.
yeah,
they're world breakers, man. They really are.
They need to sell those. It's really annoying not to be able to have one. Like I got all I have is Bogartier, and that's meh.
No, they're really, really good. That's the only, as a mild tangent here, the only pay-to-win element in this game when people talk about it, I feel, is the Snakebite Crews. That is the only true pay-to-win element in this game, because literally you're paying loot boxes to get a crew that is better than anything anyone can get, like anything else in the game that no one else can get. And the fact that it's a skill and not a perk means it's stackable with food and all of that, so you can literally get it, run food, run Brothers in Arms, run with the snapshot and smooth ride perk. All of those stack with it, and basically what that now becomes is it becomes better than the PC version of improved equipment. So you're basically having PC level improved equipment that's better, which is pretty insane. Like that's like improved equipment was a big deal on PC, and talking about breaking sort of the equilibrium of pay to win, it's even better on console. So that should give you some indication of what that sort of vector as a force multiplier is for skill. And that's why we talk about it so much when we're talking about these
I've not played
skill matchups and tank matchups.
The CAX with a snakebite, so I will bow to your experience with that. But without it, I have to say the 30B does at sniping rocks the AX's world.
No, I would say just the fact that you can run it on there is just again, any
No, I'm saying,
like
but
British
without
tanks.
that. Like, because I say,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
my,
yeah.
I
That's
can
fair,
only
that's
compare
fair.
those two because I don't have the snakebite on it. So I've
No,
literally
that's
been
fair.
playing them both yesterday and today. No, I haven't played the 30B today.
No, that's
But
that's
yeah.
fair. I personally, I think the Cax is a better Leopard 1. So I sort of view it, and I
But
think
with the Forto
the fact that that's
to Unicum, where would you put the AX?
right one below it, one tier below, definitely.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, one tier below.
The Cax is
Idea?
just a bit of a knockoff. It's a different M48 that is arguably lower, but I still enjoy it. So
It does
it's
worse
definitely-
against super heavies in the Cax, but it does much better against weaker tanks because the Hesh allows you to just to do more damage.
Have
and
insane
you can just,
DPM.
Exactly. So I feel like it's worse against super heavies, and again, we can talk maybe the console is more super heavy meta because of the corridor
Yeah.
lanes, but then that's sort of mitigated by the fact that we have such good
Flank
TDs
it,
that
bro.
super heavies aren't as viable because we have super high alpha, high pen TDs. Although that's maybe gone away with the nerf to the waffle and then the waffle Death Stars and all those. So maybe, but I feel like the 4202 is just a really really good platform. Does everything.
Would
And
you-
the CAC is just the same thing, but slightly worse.
Would you say the E4 is the only problem TD left?
I of like the trinity of problem tanks for me for TDs was definitely Waffle Death Star slot E4. I would say it's probably the last one, yeah. And
I still think the 268 is ridiculous for pubs.
it is. The only issue is that it suffers on a lot of close quarters maps, and that's more of the map inflicting balancing as opposed to the balancing of the tank.
Should we finish off the British and place the 215B?
2 and 5B, I think, is
Good.
in a good player's hand. Yeah, I would say it's good. It's got a lot of health. It can trade. It's not very good in most players' hands because it has really poor side armor. But good players can bait. I feel like I've seen a lot of really really good players just put up ridiculous numbers in that tank. And the fact that again you can do Vents Snakebite, it's still like you can just put out a lot of damage with it. But it has to be played perfectly. You have to know exactly how to place your tank in order to get those kind of numbers. So in that way, you're not. It's got a lower ceiling than like the Super Conk or probably even the Chieftain in most scenarios. But good players can get a lot out of it just by virtue of health, DPM, and tracking. I feel like.
So random
Its
point to
armor
actually
is-
make about the 215B. During the roll the dice stuff, where we have no RNG on pen,
Mhm.
every high pen tank can pen it through its turret every shot.
Like through the cheeks or what?
Straight through the front. Just, you can't block 268, E3, E4 with standard rounds. I think even the Gorilla just pen its front of its turret. Like, just every time.
Yeah, I
do
didn't
you
play it during those
you mean
ops.
like
I'm
during
not-
I
the-
did.
do you mean
I
like
was
the mainland?
at the time I was grinding a crew on it, and it was horrific. Everyone can pen you. You don't get those random RNG bounces, and at that point, its armor goes to crap.
Yeah.
So if we ever
Are you
did
talking
get
about,
that
like-
change fully introduced, it would need rebalancing, in my opinion. It would need. I mean, I think it could do with a turret buff anyway, but it would need it if we had the reduced RNG.
Yeah.
Jack, are you talking about the gun mainlet or the like turret cheeks?
I've been penned by a 268 with not prem, sorry, through the mantlet during the no RNG event.
It's the same. It's the same gun mainlet as the Super Conk and the regular Conk. So
That's it.
It's
Well.
the same. It's the same turret as the stock Conqueror.
As the stock Conqueror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's the same.
Well, you've got the armor thing at some point. You can feel free to check it, but it definitely
Close
felt
enough.
very, very weak during that event. Yeah, I think if you miss like the gun breach like bit, that's like an extra 300 odd mil or whatever it is. 260 according to the armor thing I looked at, then you just pen it.
Actually, no, it is better than a Conqueror. Just I don't think it makes much of a difference.
Yeah, it's the cheeks are still super weak. Anywho, what else could we fit? Well, as we mentioned it before, Progetto.
It's better than the K91. I'd say it's about equal to the 30B. But that's my
So
opinion.
below average.
I think it's still below average in my opinion. Skizz might differ, but
It's hard to work with, but you can do good things in it.
it's maybe a good
I
way
would
of putting
argue,
it.
though, that's. I think the thing is, we're trying to compare against like how would it compare to another tank, and at that point, I think it just falls short.
Yeah.
Does it even have the DPM to kill a 30B? Like,
These Italians
my
are
original
really
thought
hard to
was that it
work
went
with.
in tomato. But
I mean, I think it's
Skizz is a very, very good player, and so if he thinks it's above
Yeah.
tomato, then I would completely take his point of view on that.
the only thing I can think of is the numbers suggest that, and again, I don't trust. I don't really. The numbers don't mean much to me. I think there's deeper analysis and issues with those numbers, but the numbers suggest that like people are not playing totally garbage in that tank, and there's a reason for that. We just maybe people
Well, most
differ
of the
on
bad
reason
players
for
don't
that.
play it.
Or I don't think it's that. I think I've had this discussion with Nate and Skizz and some of the people who play it. I think what it is autoloader tanks in Tomato's hands are really unique because when they sense they're getting ready to die, they'll just clip out and die. Like they'll just RBRT shoot the rest of their clip and die. Whereas you can't do that in single fire. So if you think you're just going to YOLO and die, or your game's over, they're just going to clip, die, and that extra damage that they get by clipping out and just RBRTing and going down, that's the difference maker statistically to make that tank seem better than it actually is the one of the conversation points that Nate and I have had. Is we feel that's the sort of red herring there in a lot of that data, is that you have the ability to do those kind of actions where you just clip out and die. And that's, smudges a little bit of the validity of, oh, well, you're doing X damage each time. We think that's that's our inkling there. But again, we don't have the raw data they have. But
Yeah, it's fair enough. So everyone agreed on below average for that then?
yeah, I think that's fair.
Right, should we try and let's finish off different parts. So should we finish off the Swedes? Finish off because we've done the other one. So Kranvarken, where are you putting that?
Average. It's a worse 50B by most players, and I feel comfortable putting it like average or below average.
When I played it, I
I
was
would
very
say-
conflicted over it because the gun handling sucked. The gun sucked, but its ability to just kind of hold by not being pennable in that perfect hold down spot is super annoying.
Yeah.
And the being able to not be able to pin does make it, assuming that you can actually shoot it, they're not behind cover, you can actually still aim with those shots because you have an impenetrable turret.
Yeah. So average.
Yeah, I feel average,
Yeah.
a little bit above that.
I want to say good. I like the low end
See,
of
that-
good, but
We can go good. We can go good if you're.
Hope this thing expands. We're running out of room. Good's got quite a few.
it does.
But yeah,
I mean,
no, I was saying
if you
I
think
was
about a
arguing
tiered
between average
structure,
and good in my head.
you want most of your tanks to be in the.
Average or good.
Yeah, I mean that seems reasonable to me that most tanks would be that level.
Right, and then the UDAs.
It's the beer tank.
Below average, definitely. Undoubtedly.
I'm on.
Would you say
stock
it's
tonight, so I can't.
the same as the 30B and the Progetto, or would you put it better or worse than those two, though? Well, actually, no, we can go back to that Will Move review
Yeah.
and shift stuff around then.
Perhaps maybe we come back to it and just take it off and come back to it.
Finishing off the Frenchies, The AMX M4.
Average. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Its guns are not great, but its armor is. I am
Pretty strong.
strong.
Arguably on that concept, which gun would you argue is the better gun?
Most players who I've asked 3-marked it, they use the 120 with full APCR, and then went for tracking and then stuff like that. But I haven't personally played it that much. I've only played it on other people's accounts, and for me, I found the 120 was better.
The 120 is probably better. I would personally use the 130 because if I'm using the 120, I should just be playing the Super Conqueror.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point too.
Yeah, most of my knowledge around that tank is on PC. I watched Orsanel 3-mark it, and he actually ran the 120, but then immediately switched to the 130 afterwards. And it's just like the 130 is probably, he said it was something it's more fun and is more likely to get you an amazing game. The 120 is just far more consistent.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Speaking of average, let's put the E5 there.
Yeah, I think I definitely think the E5 is a
Good old Mr. Average.
So we're putting the E5 below the Kranwagen.
Yeah.
See, that's the argument bit for me. Is I would say I kind of agree with you, but then I feel like if we're putting the E5 there, we have to pull the Kranwagen down there.
I would say I think Kranwagen is better than E5. I think that's true.
Just because it's an autoloader.
Autoloader and the impenetrable hull down turret. Yeah, I can argue that.
And the
just-
Kranwagen's upper hull isn't too bad.
No, it can be quite troll one shot from the front on for sure. That just we can finish off the Americans then if we do the 96
E6.
E6, yeah. Is it 95 E6? Whatever it's called.
T95 E6.
Yeah.
That one I would say is at least good.
I would be pushing for great.
Yeah, I'm thinking great. Because it is fast, it's got pretty decent gun handling, good DPM. I think I would personally play the CAX, but the E6 is a good tank. Just
What about you,
don't
Desert?
rely on it.
Hello?
No, I'm here. Okay, so I'm just trying to following the conversation here.
Yeah, so where would you put the 95 E6?
I think it's below the Patton. I still think it's not a bad tank, so I'd put it. It's not Unicum. It's not Super Unicum.
It's the same as the
I'd say-
CAX.
Yeah, I'd say. I think
great.
that's fair. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that works. I was thinking about the same, to be honest. I've been
Let's
enjoying
see,
playing
what's
it.
that tank? It's one of the. I believe it's currently the most popular tank right now, in terms of battles played. All the tomatoes are playing it, but good for them. They earned it.
It's going to be really hard to tell which one's the Panzer 7 and which one's the VK72. I think the Panzer
But you
7
can
is
tell
the
by the
one on. Well, yeah, but it's a
You can
small
zoom
photo.
in
It's
too.
also.
You can just zoom in as well too. That's what I did because I had to do PNG.
I'm pretty sure it's the.
Which one has dreads?
Well, it's also. I think
I
it's
think-
the one on the left with the longer barrel. I think is the Panzer 7. The one on
Yeah.
the right with a shorter barrel is the 72.
The one on the right, I think I see the dreads slightly. I'm like 5 foot from my TV looking at it.
But yeah. Anyway, TVP.
I would say it's probably around good because it's a pretty fun autoloader.
Maybe post buff. I still think it's average. I remember playing it in its
I was
prime
thinking
in
average too.
2017. I remember playing it in its prime in 2017 when like the MOE requirement was 7,200 and like that was just ridiculous. I remember those days. Like me 3-marking that tank was like, I remember that was one of the hardest tanks to ever 3-mark, and at that time I still feel like that was probably the hardest, just because you had like the TNG, PG, all those players playing at the same time, getting that markup so high like that. Nothing's felt that level since, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say
and
average.
Power-
I still don't think it's that good, and I think like I'd rather play the STB one. I'd rather play the CAX. I'd rather play the Leo, to be honest. I'd rather play almost all of those tanks over it in most scenarios, just because the pen is just so poor. The gun has just been nerfed, and I know a lot of those that's been reverted. It just still feels like a poor platform, and other mediums have gotten better, and we've had the introduction
Yeah.
of things like the chisel and the snakebite perk or skill, and all of those things just to me think, why would I play this? What value am I getting by bringing this tank into battle
I
as
still
opposed
think-
to something else?
The .25 nerf was bigger than a lot of people give it credit, to its intraclip. Because that is the difference between trading against one shot or two. Like,
No, I
if
mean
you-
that's a fair
if you
fair point, and the window capability of that tank is bigger than it seems, and that's fair.
Yeah, like if you went in against a Russian medium, the Fatten, or any of these mediums that we're talking about with about a 5 to 6 second reload, with 1.5 you get your 4 shots off and get out, and you should take 1 hit. Maybe if you're unlucky, 1 on the way out, but 1 if you timed it right.
Yeah,
You're
And
taking
especially-
2 in now
Yeah.
with a slightly longer reload. You're taking 2.
yeah, and especially when you consider like what is the median aim time? 1.9 to 2.3 seconds. When you widen that window, there's a larger effect in that your window now aligns with the aim time of a lot of tanks, and so they're able to get those snapshots better onto your tank because of that window. So that's something that hasn't really talked about either.
So put it in average. I think. You okay with that, Zoran?
Yeah. I mean, I've only played the 9, and I'm probably best idea to stick with the 9. So yeah, average is probably fine.
And then I think that would be the 1-2-1 to finish off.
Yes. Average.
Yeah, I think average. I mean, the buff helped it a little bit, but it's still it's better than the 30B in my opinion. Better than the Progetto. Better in those tanks, but still not a poor tank in my opinion.
I mean, hey, at least our 430U isn't pooping on it.
Yeah.
And then
Speaking
that
of
just leaves
430U,
German
Russian
and
mediums.
Russians. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we got the Germans, but we can see. Or are you saving all those to the end?
I don't
Just
mind.
for Zoran.
We can do the Germans now if you want, or we can finish them last.
Let's finish them last so I can rant.
Okay. Oh wait, 60 TP.
Good because Big Boom.
No, I'd say what's the E100 at? I have to think where's the E100 at, or we haven't done that one yet.
We haven't
Hasn't
placed that
done
one yet.
I haven't played it.
Average. I'd say average.
I was going to say
I thought-
average. Average.
Sure.
I'd say it's got to be bottom end of good or average. I mean, like it's a solid average or a good minus.
Yeah, I think the large alpha is pretty well balanced. It doesn't have the great side armor, but good long.
Does have good
reload,
gun depression though.
Good turret. Yeah, good gun
10
depression
degrees, isn't
for-
it, or something?
It's 8.
8,
I
that
think
was
it's 8. Yeah, but of course it's also a more smaller profile tank, so that 8 does carry a bit more compared to the E100.
Is that the 260 first? No, well, there's something before it, but I can't tell what that is.
What are you?
Who are you? So we do 260 then, shall we? Because that one's quite obvious. We can work it out. We'll do the others, and then we'll work out what's left.
What is that?
Yeah, so that's so we got 260.
Oh,
If you
that's
don't
the
see the
STB
two-
right there.
Oh, is that the Oh yeah,
think-
we forgot about the STB. Okay, should we do STB then?
Yeah, let's get rid of that.
Good.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
It's still got a solid turret, hasn't it? They haven't nerfed the turret.
No,
It's turret. It's turrets. They're not buff, not nerfed.
Yeah, so it's got a decent turret with pretty damn good. It's still got the best DPM for the 390 guns.
Yes. Wait. Yes.
Yeah, I think the 430U, or yeah, not the 430U, the 430 is better. I can't think of anything else. Maybe the 422 with Hesh, but yeah, DPM wise, I think it's still.
Yeah, well, it
think
was not.
it's still
It was never better than the
AAA
100s, but it's the best of the 105s by far, or it used to be. I
Yeah.
assume it still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
The the M48, I think, is the second highest, and that has 280.
Fair enough. Yes, okay, that moves us on to the Russians. So,
Oh,
Object
There's so
260.
many.
I don't even know where I'd put that because you just don't see it played very often.
It's
I actually
armor-
haven't. Object 260.
I'd say it's yeah, I would say so. You have the Russian premiums is the 260, and then you have the 277. I would say the 277 is probably around. It's either around or a little bit below the IS-7. It's got a better heat round, so it can do a little bit more damage, a little bit better rate of fire, but ours is slightly nerfed for PCs. 260, I would say, is probably pretty similar to the IS-7. You get a little more speed. I would say all three of those tanks are roughly similar. You give up a
We've
little
got the
bit of
IS-7
something
in
in return.
great.
I would say, probably for me, I'd probably put 260 and 277 and good, not great. Then just because the turret, I guess the IS-7 is the defining feature there that allows it to be so good. But I feel comfortable with either at the same tier or slightly below the IS-7.
think
We do
that's the
teams do
277.
use the 260 to rush into certain positions to take it and take a heavy tank and just like 50 kph, into a really key position. But it's more of there because of speed, and it's not there for staying power, and that's a niche role.
So when we did wherever it was last comp thing that I actually did, the 277 was used as a discount 5A.
It's not really used at all right now. Not really. It's just
Yeah,
too poor.
if you want discount 5A, you should just use the 113.
They're not exactly the same.
Close enough.
Well,
It's not
I think
Zorn's.
they're-
I mean, they're pretty much both used. Like it's either 113 or 1Z for most of your mainline battle heavy. Maybe an IS-7 occasionally somewhere, but that's that's team dependent or map dependent.
Oh, we got a host from Swindle. Thank you, Swindle. 705A.
I think it's pretty poor.
Uh,
I'm just not a fan.
I'm always of the
Troll
opinion that
armor.
it's the three German heavies mixed together. That's my opinion.
I'd rather be in a lot of other heavies. I mean, it can hold a corner, but that's only such a small part of this game.
It's got very forgiving armor. I think that's
It's true.
one thing I'd
It's
say about it. I would argue it's got to be. I wouldn't put it in good. I think the 650. If it had 750, I think I'd put it in good. I think with the 650, average or below average, and I'm arguing average because of how forgiving the armor is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. Like, I literally was playing one against earlier, got flat broadside to it, fired into its flat broadside. No, just bounced.
Yeah, I think it's got the same that kind of IS-3 side.
No,
How about IS-4?
pretty
Oh,
terrible, man. That's probably one of the
you're-
worst
you're-
heavies in the game.
What, are you going
It's-
tomato or are you going below average?
Below average.
Tomato, dude. No,
I
dude,
said-
that thing's so bad, man. So
What is its DPM like comparative?
220.
2200? Yeah, 220. Yeah, that's what I say.
It,
Last time I checked.
I would say it's definitely better than Type 5.
I don't know. I feel the fact that you have so like the fact that that tank has such a bad gun, like its stock gun is bad, and then you get the upgraded gun, and it's not even that much better. That to me is just the hilarious part of that tank. Is like
Well,
you're
the stock gun,
play-
the stock gun is for flavor.
Does the IS-4 still
man.
have the bizarre meme of it's an absolute beast when it reverse side scrapes?
Yes. I think
Like, because that's the thing I remember at the point where it was one of the only heavies in the game. Someone who knew how to play their IS-4 who reverse side scraped, like, heat away, you're not doing anything.
Oh yeah.
And I think that if it still can do that, I would argue that's the difference between it being in tomato and below average.
yeah,
that
it
makes
can
sense.
still reverse
That's
your
actually,
head
that's
scrape.
actually pretty fair. That's a unique ability that tank has. If that's true, again, I'm not reverse side scraping an IS-4. I'm just
It's
like
because
trying
it's
to
got
drive
200.
forward, not get,
It's got 240 mil
ganked.
of side armor or something like that.
It's 160, which is very
It's at 160. Yeah. So basically, you can angle far more than you can in almost any other tank, and you will bounce the shells, which just meant you could reverse side scrape like a boss off a rock. It used to be really common at the point where it was one of the best heavy tanks because it was one of the only heavy tanks, like back in 360 days. And then you just don't see people playing it, so people don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair.
I think it's only like a few, a few specific changes away from being a nice balanced tank.
Yeah, better
Like if
gun.
it didn't have as,
Gun help, definitely.
its gun handling is like it's the worst in tier outside like derp guns. And I think that's really one of my only main gripes with it. Is I still enjoy it for what it is.
I think 140 is that one, 62A is that one, so that's 430U. So where would you place the 430U?
Ooh,
It's above
average.
average. I would say a little
I-
bit above average because its ability to, like it's lost a little bit of health, which affects its ability. It affects how it's interacts with 390 alpha tanks if they all roll standard like their normal alpha. It affects how many shots to kill from those vehicles, but not much else. So I mean, that's really the only impact from it. It's gotten 2 nerfs now on console. I still think it's still a reasonably strong medium that's able to do above average compared to medium tanks on CQB maps that are all about brawling. So it has
It's
that one
more-
ability. And
How
I mean,
much
the
do
ter-
you
the-
stop? How much do you stop
Continue.
comparing it to a medium and more of a heavy?
well, I mean, in fact, we talked about how it's going to be slotted because it's going to be slotted as a medium
Yeah.
and just be matched up against other mediums, and it's going to take that role. I mean, that's I'm comparing against what it's likely going to be match made against by virtue of matchmaker weights. So I mean, I think it's average or above average. I would say above average just because it's still can get hold down. It still can just heat round you through the face. It still can brawl pretty well. It can still trade on corners. It can still side scrape. You know, the traverses doesn't really impact I mean, I will agree the health, like I never want to lose health in a tank and have anytime a tank has health nerf, that's usually going to be, you have to take a second look at that tank, depending on the amount, and that does affect the TTK from 390 alpha tanks. But overall, I feel like that tank is still above average.
So good
So,
for
good.
I would say, so we're talking, so what is it? It goes great, good, and what's the next one?
average, below average, tomato. So I would actually say if you're going good because of the next 2 tanks I'm going to suggest we immediately do after are the 140 and the 62A. And
Yeah.
my immediate thing would say 140 goes in good as well, and 62A goes in average. And my point for that would be the 140 still bounces, has that little bit of extra gun depression, and has the DPM. But then the 62A has the DPM, doesn't have the gun depression like the 430U, but then
Speed.
is just weaker in almost every way than the 430U.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. And then we can, yeah, that line of thinking makes sense to me. I don't see an issue with that.
So yeah, like I was playing the 62A yesterday, and whenever you come across a 430U, they have to misplay or you've lost the fight. There's no situation where you could beat it. It's just better.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Then what's that? The 907, and then I can't remember the name of the other one.
430.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, yeah,
430.
430.
Um,
Which had its camo nerf below PC values a while back.
that's
So I
probably
think
was probably a good while ago.
Yeah, it was. That was patch 4.6, or if I want to say 4.6.
Which would it
I'm
maybe
not sure it was
be
that.
430 still in good because it still has the highest DPM. It has higher front armor than
I
some of them.
The modules it's got the
Yeah.
worst modules though is the issue. It's got some of the worst modules for a medium tank. Its gas is right in the front. That's the big issue is that if you shoot the lower plate, you're like the way that the pike is built, you're either shooting like the oil or the driver, and those like you're as a medium tank, those are two really bad places for a Russian tank because you're gonna get lit on fire. There's a high chance to get lit on fire if I remember correctly.
I mean, the 140 does have the fuel tank in there as well.
I don't think it has the driver though in the front center. I don't think it. I think you have to go left or right if I remember correctly.
The 140 has the driver. If you're facing the tank, the 140 has a driver in the right, and entire
Yeah.
left is fuel tank. The 430 is
You can
the
hit
driver
both
in the
in one
center,
shot,
and there's
correct?
and the fuel tanks are on the left and right.
Okay. What are you thinking here,
Um,
Jack?
I think the 430 realistically should be above the 907.
Okay.
I think the 907 still has significantly worse DPM. And I don't know what the upper plate on both is comparative though. Like one of the things that the 430 had as one of its original features, which is kind of the 430U kind of makes it a tad redundant, is the fact that it was a better brawler than the 140 and the 62A.
Okay.
And I don't think that's still, well, I think that still is the case, but now things like the 430U exist, and so does the 907. The 907 loses on the DPM front, the 430U just beats it hands down on the brawling front. So I think we place the 907 and the 430 goes in the middle.
That makes sense.
So if the 907 goes in average, then either it has to go in, either they both go in average, or the 430 goes in good. And I don't really know where the 430 goes. I know they can still pull out monstrous games because of that insane DPM. And I know the turret is still quite bouncy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm leaning towards putting the 430 in good and the 907 in average. But I could be persuaded by information that is not readily available to me right now.
I can't think off the top of my head. I'm just trying to think like I would almost, like I said, I would always rather to be in a 140 or 62A over the 430. Like even though it has good DPM and I love perma tracking, there's just deep-seated issues with the tank that can't be reconciled, right?
We could put them both in average, which would be the same as the 62A.
That works. I mean that's
I mean, we can always reshuffle later.
Yeah, the 62 has a much better gun handling than 140.
Well, the 140 at the moment is above just because it's just it plays the slightly different roles to the 62A.
Not the 140, the
430.
430.
Yeah, that was one thing, if I remember correctly, it had awful gun handling. I mean, we could also put them
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
in below average.
But for me, like the one thing, the camo nerf hurts that tank. It hurts that tank a little bit more because that was one thing that it had over the 62 and the 140 was that it had a little bit better camo, so you could get in closer before you get detected, and that plays to the fact that it has a weaker gun in terms of accuracy, and so you could get up closer and fire, and so you could be at 200 meters as opposed to 230 meters, you know, on a tank that has a really crappy view range.
I think they both go in average because the way I'm going to put it this way: I would still rather be in one of those than in the 30B or the Peugeot.
No, I agree, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, and
I agree with that.
these are still Russian mediums.
Yeah,
I mean,
they still have good soft stats generally.
yeah, which just leaves the Germans. So should we get the two mediums out the way first?
I'll leave. I'll let Zoran do his thing here, and I'll just shut up.
So Leopard 1, Zoran.
Leopard is a good tank. It works hard to be a good tank, but it's not going to get anything better than good.
Does that seem fair, Des?
Yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, it seems. I like the Leopard a lot. I've done the 3 mark on it for a couple of counts. I love it. It's one. I personally like it a lot. But again, it's generally inferior to the 4202, Patton, M60, CAX, and those are all already placed. So I feel, yeah, that makes sense.
E50,
then
E50 is
E50M.
a tank. The tank's powered by Spite. It shouldn't
I'm
be
thinking
good at all.
below
It still
average.
performs well. Yeah, below average. That somehow still plays average.
I think
Yeah, for
the fact that its
average or
gun is
below
still
average.
decent. I mean, the DPM's trash, but the gun is at least decent. Is probably what saves it from being in tomato.
It's better than I think it's better than the Progetto, and it's better than the 30B for me.
But it's worse than the Russian mediums.
Generally, yeah, I think so. I'd rather play a Russian medium than E50M.
Um,
And so we just have the heavies. So should we start with the E100 because that one is a tad more simple to place. We'll end on the mouse.
Let's see the. We put the 60 TP in average, right? We did.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. So good for the E100.
Hell no, dude.
Average.
Yeah,
Average for them both.
Yeah.
The E100.
I'd
Yeah.
probably put all the Germans in the average. Maybe I could argue that VK in the good.
The only one,
should we-
so I'd put them all in average. The only one I think I would bump up would be the VK72, and
Yeah.
here's my rationale for that: is the module has more health, and so if people are shooting your gun, there's a higher chance that the gun absorbs the damage. Also, the fact that it has more alpha, and I think it has slightly more DPM
No,
than the
it's
VK.
exact same stats as the 100.
Or no, it's
Compared to the
other
Panzer
VK,
VII.
the VK70, the Panzer 7. Sorry. I think it has slightly better DPM and it has a little bit better alpha. I mean, it's a little bit harder to snap your shots in because you're usually not firing APCR. You're shooting your heat rounds from that. But I feel like I like the VK72, and it's a premium tank on console, so you can put any crew in it. I feel like for me, all of those contribute to the fact that I like the VK72 a little bit more. And if people are trying to shoot you through your mantlet, I like the bigger gun. The trading helps with that too.
The playstyle helps. The playstyle fits bigger alpha.
I really would have thought the mouse would have been in below average.
Its gun is bad, but it just eats. It is just so hard to kill. But it's also quite slow.
Yes, yeah. I think the thing I was going to say is, how often does a mouse actually even contribute a damn thing? Well, to its own team.
I mean, eating damage is contributing in one way, but like I understand your premise. Yeah, like it's not like an all-star tank. It's just you're there to die. You're not there to actually play the
part
game.
of my thought process was actually Des's. I can't remember your exact terming, but point being that we said we can't put the E100 or the VK higher because the ability to eat damage doesn't count for anything. And I feel like the mouse is only at average because of its ability to eat damage. So if we're not buffing the other ones for going, hey, look, it's got a big gun and can eat damage, well then we either have to buff the other ones based on.
In comp, it's only job I was referencing comp. In comp, if something's job is to eat damage, like that's, I mean, in comp that makes sense because there's going to be as you're eating damage, there's like a retaliation, right? Like, oh, you eat damage here that allows us to push up this flank. That's not going to happen in a pub match. Like, you're just going to eat the damage and like that's it. They just got a bunch of free EXP and your team's just still going to lose. Like there's not going to be like that quick coordination of as soon as you go down, you know, your team's going to swoop in and save the day, or like you're going to cap out, or some sort of like grand strategy behind you dying. It doesn't happen in a pub match generally. You're dying because you're dying, and that's just the game. You're going to go to the garage screen.
Yeah. And in terms of eating damage, the E100 actually does eat damage decently well, while the mouse actually, it so blocks a lot.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a mouse be overly useful. I guess they are sort of like a roadblock. Actually, I think that's one of the most hilarious uses of a mouse I've ever seen. Was someone literally blocked off a road. Like they knew they were going to die, so they just went side on and literally blocked off the road, so the other team had to fucking turn around. It's one of the best uses I've ever seen of a mouse.
If there's one thing carrying the German nation, it's Panzerwagen.
Yeah, well, the grill is up there a little bit.
I don't like it.
I like the Gorilla a lot.
It's not what I want from the line. I want a tier 10 Waffenjäger, not a tier 10 abomination.
To be fair, I actually half agree that it doesn't fit massively in. This is the I at first Turkey really didn't like the Gorilla, and you've seen how he plays in it now, and I will take some credit to that because he was playing it like the mini waffle, and I said to him, no, it's called a medium because it's not a medium, but it damn well plays like one. It plays like a medium with a 750 alpha gun. You play it like a medium. He went and played it, and then within like 3 games, he's pulling off 8k damage. Like, it's ridiculous. And that's the thing. You suddenly go from this, find a nice bush, maybe a good rock about 400 meters away, and snipe, to going up surprisingly close and personal and snapshotting people for 750 with your stupidly fast aim in time. And it's just fantastic at doing that. While it can still also snipe quite well.
Yeah, I feel like of the 750 Alpha TDs, it's probably one of my favorite. And I feel like it's better than... It's not as good as a lot of the 850s, but it's my favorite of the non-850s. That's a better way of saying that. Of the non-850s, I think it's my favorite. And I think it can flex around, and some of the camo perks you mentioned earlier really help that tank.
Yeah. So should we, for reorganizing, re-evaluating to see if we agree with everything, I think let's start at below average. Because I think we can agree, 4 we have in Tomato, K91, Type 5, that whatever it's called, the WZ,
WZ 113G FT.
Yeah. And the Tusk. They're pretty much just determined down there.
Should we make a new tier list for fun for the Tusk?
No.
And then
let's
talk about the top. The top. We'll do the bottom and the top, and then and then just look.
If we do below average and see what could move. So at the moment, that's the Manticore, the WZ, I think, the 268 version, 430. Sorry, not 430. Jesus, 30B, the Progetto, the UDES, the IS4, and the E50M. I can't really see any of them moving up.
Nope.
No, I think those are all pretty sound.
I would. Again, I don't mind it, but I could almost see an argument for the 30B moving down. Well, I mean, if I'm saying compare it.
I think a media. So I don't think it's tomato because I don't think almost any, bar the K91, I don't think any medium is that low, even the 30B.
I think it's at the very least though, it's a below average minus. Like it's got to be halfway because I mean if you compare it to the Progetto and the E50M,
you can move it to the end of the list if that makes you feel better.
That's true. Symbolic. There you go. It's at the back of the line.
Yeah, next to the E50 for E50.
But yeah, as I was saying, the only place where I thought it actually has any form of excel is it's got really good gun handling for sniping. As Des points out, there's better tanks for that based on the heat alone. And I think the E50 has decent heat pen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not bad.
E40.
It's got decent accuracy. It's got better armor. So at that point, the 30B doesn't really have anything over the 50M either. Well, concealment. But
yeah, envy range.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're chai sniping at 440 meters, that doesn't make a difference. So that was the only reason why I was saying that was the only one that I could see out of those that could even be argued to move down. Is now that we've completed the below average list, it's the worst of the below average mediums.
Okay.
I'm very happy keeping it there because I don't mind the tank. Like my first game in it was like 6k damage.
No,
Let's see.
I think I'm good with how things are structured there. I'm good with that.
Right.
See.
Should we do the top two then?
Yeah, let's look at the top two, and then we'll work in the middle is obviously where most of our tanks are going to fall, and that's just the way that a bell curve works
Okay.
with this.
Okay, we got the Tri-Herd tier, which is E4, Super Conk, 5A, Machine, M60, and the Richard Cutler
Valor.
tank.
The Valor, yeah. I feel pretty strongly that all of those are pretty firmly entrenched in those positions, and that there's reasonable argumentation on why they are that way. So I think those are fine. Any comments from you guys on feelings towards those tanks, or?
I think they're all strong, and the only one I could argue at all is the 5A, but I don't think it would deserve to go down for it. I think in very specific circumstances it loses to other tanks, but then so does everything. So
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's 5A.
consistent.
5A is just really good.
5A's consistently had that highest 3 mark in the last year.
yeah.
He's right about
It's-
that. Yeah.
it's-
When I did my 3 mark infographic, it was like 5,600 for 2 months, and that was number one for a while.
Yeah, 5A's has been consistently the highest 3 mark for a while, and right now it's the highest 3 mark.
My memory of the 5As in comp were they're either a pain in the ass that are heat spamming you and you can't do anything about it, or you outbrawl the crap out of them with an IS-7.
Who the heck's been playing the 121? Why is its 3 mark so high? Whatever. Purple tanks. Representing the only good German, the Panzerwagen. What the heck is that? Chisel, 268, 113, 57, Chieftain, M48, and FV.
The FE205B's in there?
The 4202.
Oh, 202, yeah. Yeah, I was about to say, the only
I'm
205B's.
I'm a bit iffy on the 42.
Oh, I think it's definitely up there, man. I'm telling you, I think it's good. I think it's so good.
Yeah, it's pretty gimmicky with its Hesh, but I suppose that's enough.
Yeah. It just requires that a player be able to, you have to be able to pen tanks with 270. You have to know those weak spots. That's the only downside of that tank is you need to know weak spots, and if you don't, you're not going to do very well. But if you're able to manage that 270 and you can live with that, it's a good tank.
Yeah, that's why I put my snakebite crew on it, just to make sure you've got the best of the gun handling.
Put my snakebite crew in my Tog. If I ever get one.
I actually have put my what's it called? The British one, there's one that's also exclusively British, the one that's sort of like Last Stand.
Yeah,
Colours-
yeah. That
is-
so
That's a
It's very
hilarious
good.
meme.
to touch, I think, were you the one that talked about the double? Oh no, John Man Archer did a whole thing on this. That tank that actually goes really, really well in the Badger because the Badger has 2 loaders, and so apparently there's some sort of effect there. It does that perk does really, really well in the Badger, and the Badger has more health, and so when you there's a higher margin of you having low health, right? So that 10%, and so it's apparently really ridiculous because I guess it gets like double the benefit because you have 2 loaders.
Possibly. I would have to look at how it's applied because a console
it's
doesn't usually work
probably-
like that.
It's probably applied the same as Adrenaline Rush, which does affect 2 loaders.
Well,
Not Adrenaline Rush.
Brothers in Arms.
Intuition.
Are you-
Intuition.
okay.
Yeah, because Intuition has a 33 instead of like a 17%.
I say the adrenaline rush is specifically that it affects your only reload. I don't know. Possibly, because it's confusing with console crew perks because we don't see how they're actually applying.
Yeah.
But yeah, if
Great.
it does, then yeah, that would be interesting. But I think, how much health has it got? Like 1900?
2,100.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was that high.
Think that's it.
Yeah, so you'd have to get below 210 health. Which is not, I guess, too much different than the 2500 on the thingy.
Oh, yeah, 2,100. Great tanks. Grill IS7. Object Object E3. What is that? T100, 50B, CAX, E6.
Yep.
Yeah, all this seem good. I mean, I'm a bit iffy on the IS7 because its pin is pretty poor in both its guns, but
I mean, the APCR is
both its
relatively
ammo.
reliable.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, as much as it's not great, if you're firing at a range where that is overly important, you're playing it wrong.
Yeah.
I think the turret, just the fact that it still has one of the best turrets in the game, is just you can't. It's just there's nothing like it. Maybe the
The
Valor
armor is just
now,
flat
but-
out is still pretty good. I mean, even if all you've got to really do is hide the bottom of the pike behind a rock, and you can bounce unbelievably large numbers of shots.
Yeah, that's why it still has a continued role in comp. I feel like is because just how good that armor is.
Okay.
It's
Good
great
tanks.
at slowly dying, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Good tanks. STRV, Sheridan, Heshbarn, Badger, 263, Foch, Waffle, Bat Chat, T90, FV215B, Cranmogen, STB,
Yeah.
260, 277, 430U, 140, Leopard, VK72.
Yep.
Any of those you guys feel strongly about?
No, I don't really see
On
much movement
reflection?
in that.
I want to put VK72 because I'm self-loathing in terms of German, but is at the end, so good enough.
And I
Crazy.
feel like, and just this is just a like a warning label here. I feel like as we dip into these these middle bands, we'll call them. I feel like things they can go either way. Like I don't feel like we're marrying a tank to one.
Yeah, like there's a lot of
To
weak
one level.
goods and a lot of strong averages, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like, I'd say the Jaegeru is probably slightly further down in the average for me than the Death Star would be, purely because of a turret. Like, I love my Jaegeru.
Yeah.
It's a meme. But if you're at a corner, you can't side scrape out, poke, shoot, and only take 1 or 2 shots minimum in response. You have to go out, fully expose your armor, which is stronger, but if anyone's firing heat, it doesn't matter. It'll just get banned.
And you have to fully aim in because your reload's to like 20 seconds, and you have to make sure your shot hits. And the enemies who's gonna be poking you is gonna be cautious because you're in a Yagru, so they're only gonna expose it as much or as low as they can while they're shooting at you, and then immediately retreating. Eh.
I did see an interesting thing. The Jaegeru in Ranked was bizarrely powerful. I don't know if anyone saw this, and I've not played the last 2 seasons of Ranked, so it could have changed. But the previous, 3 or 4 that I did play, someone in a Jaegeru just loaded heat and literally they bum rushed over as soon as they arrived. Because it's doing that, it essentially works in the same way that in comp people did use E100's mouses, just to be a bullet sponge, except it also deals 1,000 alpha.
yeah.
It
The
just
only issue
comes
is
over,
You
just
just instead of like
smack
7
someone.
guns farming you, you've got 15 guns able to penetrate, like able to screw you up. But I think the only issue is like in pubs, the tank has to be managed really well in in pub matches, because obviously there's more enemies, and if you're firing, you have to, whenever you're firing and you have that gap of reload, you have to manage that in your position, and can you be just rushed and farmed, and so you're super reliant on your teammates around you. Another thing too is like when you're cleaning up tanks, if a tank is 200, 400, 600 health, you're wasting so much alpha on that tank for doing cleanups on corners, and so you really have to manage if you want to do max farm and max damage. You have to be shooting at largely full health tanks, and so you have to go to a place where there's a population of tanks that can support that. Okay, I'm gonna have 3 full health tanks and the opportunity to shoot these vehicles here, or I'm wasting my alpha cleaning up low health tanks. That's the other little piece of that too. But.
Yeah. The catch-22 of what you just said as well is if you go to the place where you're going to be able to do the most damage, obviously you're capable of taking the most damage, but if that flank collapses, you can't go anywhere. Death Star it's not too bad. You could probably get away at least a corner or two. Drop back, get a shot off, drop back, get a shot off before you get rushed. You can't do that in the Jaeger. You're just there.
Yeah. The only thing about the Jaeger though is that you can do a little bit more ramming. You're a little bit more resistant. Yeah. You don't get caught on fire as much. The Death Star has really bad engine mod, like a really bad fuel tank, and it's positioned to where if you're side scraping, if you overring a little bit, they're usually going to penetrate your fuel. That's why Death Stars burn so much. So I feel like the Jaeger's a hardier tank, and you can be a little more aggressive with it. But like you said, there's risk there too. But the Jaeger
side scopes are also fantastic.
But now that the Death Stars typically, like when I 3-marked mine, I shot AP because I didn't 3-mark it till after the nerf. I feel like because they're shooting more AP that I'd rather be in a Death Star because I'd rather be in a Jaeger. I'd rather be in a Jaeger, sorry, because the rate of fire, sorry. I'd rather be in a Jaeger almost always now if I'm shooting AP. Just because the AP on that tank is, for me, I feel like it's more consistent. And I can shoot heat if I want to with the butter any tank. Well, you can also shoot heat out of the Jaeger.
More accurate as well.
Mode.
HE Jaeger is always memes.
I also tend to run optics on my Jaeger, so I would go rammer vents optics, and then on my Death Star, you almost have to go gun lane driver rammer vents because you have to that gun is so trolly. So yeah. I feel like the coated optics in the Jaeger can help a little bit more, and you can't really get away with that as much on a Death Star with optics because you just need to help that gun so much.
I'm gonna quickly go AFK and get some food.
No problem.
Is there an argument for Stridsvagen being dropped down?
No, I think I like where it's at. Its DPM was nerfed a while back, but I still think that's the tank. It's map dependent, but people can get it to work, and I feel like
that was the thing it's the map dependency compared to something like the Badger and the 263. And the
Agreed,
Waffle.
But like I would try to take that thing hill on hill, like we talked about this. I feel like even then you can just out DPM people. I'll just sit in like in front of a tank and just monk it and just go full DPM and just not move and let it shoot me every time, but I'll shoot it twice back.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what do I agree with, and then what can I counter it to try and disagree with myself.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a good way to do it, actually.
Because if you remember, originally I was trying to say that the Stridsvagen might even be higher. But no, I think good is probably the best place for it.
I don't think it deserved the nerf it got, but it's still a good tank.
No, I was going to say the AMX M4 can't go up. Definitely, I think average is perfect for the AMX M4 thing. The armor is good enough, like it's quite troll, certainly quite tanky, but the gun's just not good enough, and there's no real reason to play it over something at one of the tiers above it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair sentiment to have for the tank. Exactly what you've just said.
So no, I can't see much movement in that, to be honest.